Dr. George King founded the Aetherius Society in 1955, and he founded it to spread the teachings of intelligences from other worlds who had contacted him. It's still pretty controversial, but in those days, in the 50s, and especially in London, it was extremely contentious thing to be saying. He was widely ridiculed, but he stuck to his guns completely. He was fearless. And there will come a day, and it's been prophesied in many, many sources, when we will have heaven on earth. But that will be when the great energy of the Mother Earth prevails, and we all live according to the spiritual laws.
Guy here. Today's guest is Richard Lawrence, a renowned contact researcher and a spiritual teacher who spent over 4 decades working with the extraordinary teachings of his mentor, Dr. George King. Well, and he was an interesting guy, and anyway, we'll get into it. In this conversation, Richard shares what was predicted all the way back in 1955 about Earth's awakening, the rise of Kundalini, which is also an interesting experience, and the role of benevolent extraterrestrials and how we are being activated right now to serve a greater purpose. This is one of those episodes that may challenge what you think, but it might also confirm what you feel to be true as well. Look, fascinating conversation. I love Richard. I love his matter-of-fact way of speaking and presenting. And yeah, please, if you're watching this on YouTube, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And as always, let me know where you are in the world so we can continue to connect. It's beautiful to see how these conversations are getting out there and enjoyed by many. And of course, if you are wanting to find out what we're up to, we're in New Zealand. We're going to be in Croatia this November for a 5-day retreat. Come and join us. It's going to be incredible if you can get there. Also, 2026 is looking phenomenal as we map it out as well. Links are below if you need any free resources, want to come to one of our events and so forth. Anyway, much love from me. Enjoy this conversation with Richard. It's awesome. Richard, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you, Guy.
It's wonderful, huh?
Mr.
Lawrence to Mr. Lawrence, I know. We're speaking off air, and I said, "Oh, he's got to be a good chap with a surname like Lawrence." Absolutely. No.
We have to follow the law with that name, Lawrence. We have to stick to the law, but it's the spiritual law.
I certainly feel like I'm living my life that way. That's for sure. If you're not in authenticity and really owning your truth, you get. I found I've got knocked around in life. That's for sure. And every time I come back to the universal law and listen to my heart, life becomes a lot simpler.
I think we do that through the lives, and we just keep being steered back. Be a lot simpler if we just stuck to it in the first place. But that's why we're here.
Right. I'm a slow learner, I must be. But so anyway,
I think we all are.
Certainly. Well, I'm really excited to get into the conversation and introduce you to the listeners and what you're about, Richard. So I'll ask the same question. I love using this one, but if you were at an intimate dinner party and you sat next to a complete stranger and they said, "Oh, hello, what do you do for a living?" How would you reply?
It does happen, yes. And then they get a shock and there might be an embarrassed silence. What I do for a living is I'm a spiritual teacher. I'm an author of many books, and I help to run an organization, and have done actually for decades, called the Aetherius Society.
Okay. Oh, what is it?
And I have a podcast actually called The Spiritual Freedom Show, which I do with Darren.
Oh, beautiful. Well, we'll make sure we'll link to that as well. I haven't listened to it yet, but I will definitely. And what's Ethereum?
Aetherius.
Sorry.
So it's spelled in the Greek way, Aetherius. It means one who travels through the ethers of space. It's the etheric realm. And, in Sanskrit, you'd call it the Akashic realm or level, the subtle level, if you like. And it comprises all energy and all matter, both physical and superphysical. And it's the name of the organization that Dr. George King founded, and he's a wonderful intelligence. He's not physically alive now. I was very, very close to him. He founded the Aetherius Society in 1955, and he founded it to spread the teachings of intelligences from other worlds who had contacted him. And that was, in those days, it's still pretty controversial, but in those days, in the 50s, especially in London, it was extremely contentious thing to be saying. He was widely ridiculed, but he stuck to his guns completely. He was fearless. I mean, he just stuck to the truth, as you were saying earlier, living the truth. And this truth he had to spread. He wasn't particularly inclined to it. He wasn't attracted to like media and the public platform. He was very good at it when he did it, but he wrote many books. And it's one of the genuine contact. I think the problem a lot of people have now when they come in and they're looking into contacts with intelligences from other worlds is the problem of discrimination, because there's so many claims there. They cannot all be true because they contradict each other, quite a few of them. So they can't all be true. And you've got to find a way through it. And some people just get put off. This is just too much. Where do you start? Where do you end? But you can find out through discrimination. And that's what I did. And I've stuck to it ever since, which is over 4 decades.
Wow.
And that's what I've done with my life. So this dinner party will either go well or it'll be very embarrassing for everyone.
Dependent, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting because when people ask me, I say I run spiritual retreats, and I never really get pushed back. Any like most people go, oh, I tend to lean in these days, which is interesting.
Yeah, they do. You're right, and it's changed a lot now, and I find that too nowadays. Most people are open. They're either open or polite. Most
Yeah.
people, but that's a big difference. I mean, I remember the day because I used to lecture on UFOs, and I mean, back in the early 80s, for example, you could be booed in a lecture hall. You could get a lot of flack. It was, and other people were with you, and it was really quite contentious. And whenever I did media interviews, which I did a lot on the mainstream media in those days, they'd always get a skeptic in, a disbeliever in, usually an astronomer who had never seen a UFO. Doesn't mean they don't exist, though. Somehow they thought they were an expert, and they just weren't. But, this is the way they handled it. But things have moved on quite a bit now. And of course, there's also a lot of proof now. And one thing we know for sure is that governments have lied. But I mean, I said that then. And Dr. King said it in the 1950s. So he was way ahead of his time. And in my opinion, he stands tall among all claims of UFO contact. He's never said he's the only one, but he's certainly a unique one. And I would recommend people look into.
Wow. So the thing that I find really interesting and I want to explore is that, when you, like, say, if you're speaking about this in the 80s, you're going to get booed, right? And you could do.
You might.
Or more easily ridiculed, than because, there's so much more information available today that we can have these conversations and actually explore the topic first without throwing rocks at it. But
although on one occasion, I was having quite a hard time in a 3-hour phone in on sorry, I interrupted you there, in a station in where you came from, really, in the West Country, with a guy called Johnny Walker. I don't know if he was possibly before your time. But anyway, while we were on air, a UFO came down and beamed down on a car. There were no mobile phones then, of course. But so that kind of interrupted the show and extended the show, and some people stopped booing then and laughing because it actually happened.
Holy moly!
Sorry,
no, that's all right. But I guess it's to explore where, because you'd have to be very, very passionate to be talking about these conversations in that time. And where did that come from? Did it come from meeting George King with your journey? Or
very much so. I mean, but my interest was spiritual from the beginning. I would say from the age of 14. And I remember the day. I got up one morning and I suddenly thought, what's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life? And I found two things. I found that the people really who I would have thought should know, such as I went to a school connected to the Church of England in Canterbury, and I was being taught there by the dean of the cathedral, and people like this. And people you would expect might know, they didn't know. I could see they didn't know. I'm not sort of decrying that religion or anything, but for me, the answers did not add up. And what disturbed me a lot more than that, though, was the fact that they didn't really seem to care. They were quite satisfied. You'd have people, who were quite brilliant in their fields. Might be finance, might be law, might be, you couldn't fool them. You couldn't sell them a dodgy car, or they're very discerning, and yet they would go to church and not question anything in those days. So I then started on my quest. I particularly was drawn to yoga and Eastern philosophy, and Dr. George King was a master of yoga.
Okay.
So that was my first way into him, rather than the UFOs. But he was also a UFO contactee. He's not the first master of yoga to be contacted by UFOs. There's always been this connection between space intelligences and spirituality. You find it in the Bible, you find it in the Hindu scripts, you find it right across in Egypt, ancient Greece, Native American traditions. It's there. So that's the thing that really drew me to it and fired me up.
Gotcha. And why isn't everyone seeing it? Is it, because we were speaking about Kundalini off air as well, and this energy that moves through the body,
yeah.
and what I found on my own journey, it's really kind of it almost expanded my awareness to
Absolutely.
reality per se. And what do you think is going on with UFOs? Is it that our awareness is so narrow that we don't stop to tune into a different energy field, or is it simple?
I was thinking about that because for many, many years, apart from my spiritual interest, which is the number one thing, and for Dr. King, UFOs as a topic was not his main interest. He'd seen them. He'd actually been in
Wow.
one. He had a lot of experience of it, a lot, but it wasn't his prime interest. His prime interest was actually the Mother Earth, spirituality, the energy from the sun, how we can save the planet, how we can save humanity. That's service to others was the thing that really motivated him. But I was thinking, for many, many years, for decades, governments lied. They're still not telling the whole truth now, but they absolutely blatantly lied. And this is not me just coming up with a conspiracy theory. It's on the record. The Pentagon have admitted it, and so have other governments around the world now. It's come out. It's pretty well proven, but a lot of people are none the wiser. A lot of people now, which they didn't used to do, will say, yeah, well, I believe in UFOs, no problem. But they don't go to the next stage, which is why are they here then? What's their plan? Why are they allowing a jet to follow them? And and even fire a missile at them, which is a CIA document. That's not again a piece of fiction. And doing nothing in retaliation other than proving that they exist. What are they waiting for? When will they come openly? Who are they? And people aren't asking. Those are the questions that people really need to ask, including governments. They're nowhere near asking those questions. They're too busy worrying about their popularity the next day and whether they'll win the next election. If UFOs cropped up, their only question would be, will this help me get elected
Yeah.
or not?
So what have you discovered on your exploration of this then? Why are they here? Have you, what has your contact been with them in your personal journey?
Well, I've had a number of sightings. I don't claim contact with extraterrestrial intelligences. I've been with Dr. King when he's had contact with extra intelligences. A plan was certainly laid out through the Aetherius Society for continued cooperation with intelligence. I'll give you one example. There's a particular craft by the name of Satellite Number 3, which comes into orbit at certain times of the year. And it beams energy to the world, and it enhances and it potentizes spiritual activities, because their problem, the beings from other worlds, and why they don't come down and absolutely take over the world and prove themselves to all people and solve all our problems, is because we are here to advance. We are here to evolve, as I'm sure you've discovered through your Kundalini experiences. We're here to learn. They're not going to rob us of the greatest thing there is, which is experience. But if we do make a move, if we do pray for others, if we do tune in, if we know about it, to satellite number 3, and you don't have to know about it to benefit from it, then they can take action. Then they can potentize our actions without interfering with us. They won't interfere with us. That's why this answers the question of why they operate the way they do, which is to provide firm evidence. And there is firm evidence of their existence, not only now, but through the ages. But they're waiting for something. And what they're waiting for is for us to change. And the main way we need to change is service to the whole world and devotion to the Mother Earth. Because the Mother Earth, this planet, is a living, and the ancient Greeks were right. They had her, the top of their pantheon of gods and goddesses was Gaia, and they weren't wrong. This is way before Socrates and so on. They knew that, and they were right. We owe everything to the Mother Earth, including, I should say, Kundalini, which comes ultimately from her. That's one of the big, big secrets, which is no longer secrets on the Guy Lawrence podcast.
And many others as well.
And others
Yeah,
too,
no,
yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. But for me, it's definitely been experiential, and then trying to piece the pieces together
Yeah.
and work backwards almost. I'm so glad you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
funny.
I was going to say, I'm so glad you said that about Mother Earth, because I do feel like these conversations around UFOs and sightings and contact, and you even see it with channeling and all sorts of things, which is wonderful, but can be a distraction in terms of allowing us to actually dive within ourselves and explore what's in the
Yeah.
way of that connection.
Yes.
What can we be letting go of to become more of a service of humanity? Unless it is a
Absolutely
gateway
right.
in.
It is a gateway, and if it's used in the right way, and not, you don't go down some sidetrack of sort of analyzing pages and pages of government documents and radar trackings and all the rest of it. Once you've ascertained that they do exist, and they do exist, what matters is why they are here. But I want to agree with you wholeheartedly, because the Aetherius Society, I mentioned what the word Aetherius means, but there is an actual intelligence given the name of Aetherius, which was the first contact Dr. King had, actually in 1954. And then the next year he founded the Aetherius Society. So we're celebrating our 70th anniversary, actually, this year. As an organization. Not that I was around running it then, but still. Now, there is a quote, though, from the Master Aetherius, and from a very early message that he gave Dr. King, which is right up the alley, as we say over here, of what you just said, which was this: it was reach upwards, reach outwards, but never forget to reach inwards. And it's so true, because I'm sure you've experienced this, and I bet you lots of people who watch your podcast have experienced this. If you're in a certain frame of consciousness and a certain frame of mind, you can be told something, and it makes, suddenly you understand it. It makes perfect sense. In fact, you can understand more even about it than you're being told, because of your state of mind. And another person in another state of mind could be told the very same thing, and they either wouldn't be very interested in it at all, or they just wouldn't believe it without even knowing. I always say that atheism, which is like disbelief in God. I don't mean agnosticism, but atheism, where you're certain there's no God, is a mental health condition, because you don't know it. You don't know there's no God. But when you do certain advanced practice, if you enter through Kundalini experiences, a samadhic condition, you know there's God. You can't prove it to anyone else, but you can tell them how they can prove it to themselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you speak of Mother Earth, and you spoke about the energy of the sun as well.
Yes,
For
absolutely.
most people, they wouldn't even be aware of these concepts. When they start leaning into
Yeah,
spirituality, it might be just I need to silence the mind.
true.
Why are they such a
Yeah,
key component to the work you teach?
thank you. What I'd say is that we are all solidified sunlight. That's another thing the master Ethereus said. That's all we are, solidified sunlight. All the energy in this solar system comes either from or through, whichever way you see it, the sun. And this is the provider of all energy on every level, including the etheric level. Even the earth, I believe, was created by the sun. And so you could say the Mother Earth even comes from the sun in terms of her form, although she is a living intelligence in her own right, who could live wherever she chose, but she is willing to live here for our sake. And she's making a tremendous sacrifice, putting up with awful things, not just pollution, nuclear conflagration, which has happened on Earth before. I mean, if you ever look at the Mahabharata, you're looking there, the old Vedic text, the old Hindu text, you're looking at a description there of a nuclear conflagration. They don't say that because the people who wrote it down didn't know exactly what it was, but it clearly was. And you get this in many traditions actually across the world. So these things have happened. They have damaged the earth. The earth has put up with it. She's doing this to provide us with sanctuary, to provide us with the opportunity safely to gain experience. And we have reincarnations on Earth. And some people will remember their former lives. You don't have to remember them, though, by the way, at all. But they are part of our evolutionary progress. But in the future, there'll come a wonderful time when people will ascend, when people will advance, when people won't require even reincarnation. I mean, the only reason we have a reincarnation is to hold to check us, because we go off the rails so much that we have to die and then sort of be recalibrated and come back in another life to learn the experience we should be learning. Dr. King said something which is a bit wordy, but I think it's brilliant. He said, we're having too many people having too much experience to experience the way experience should be experienced. Sorry about that. But what it means is that experience of itself, like a bucket list or something like that, isn't necessarily the experience we need. It's not what we need to be doing is gaining the experience we need to evolve. And that's what the reincarnation cycle enables. There'll come a time when we won't need that and the earth will change. So the energy from the earth is all consuming and it will be everything, really. And one of its greatest manifestations, as far as we are concerned, is through Kundalini, which you've experienced. And when you raise Kundalini, of course, as you know, as I'm sure you know, you aren't just raising an energy. You are raising an energy, but you aren't only raising an energy. You're raising a tiny, tiny aspect of a life force. That's why it's so fundamentally transformational. And that life force is Mother Earth.
So, would the first step or the gateway in to spirituality then is actually acknowledging Mother Earth?
I would say so. And then you asked about the sun, which I didn't cover really. The sun, when as described in the yoga writings, you raise a kundalini through the chakras, because as I'm sure you know, I'm sure your viewers know, as you raise kundalini, whether you do it consciously or unconsciously, and by the way, I don't believe it should ever be forced. There are exercises which try and force it. These can be very dangerous. I wouldn't recommend that. But if you do it in a natural, unforced way, you'll start to activate all the major chakras. This can actually destabilize you. I don't know whether you've had that experience, but it can. in the first stages be quite destabilizing, because everything is empowered. Everything within us is empowered. Unless we be completely pure, it's not always a wonderful experience. But all these experiences are necessary. But then we gradually learn to bring those under control. And we awaken the chakras as we go higher and higher and higher. And obviously, the third eye is a very, very important one. But ultimately, we take it up to the highest chakra, which is the crown center, known sometimes as Brahma chakra, on the top of the head. Now, that should be done very carefully. I'm not trying to suggest people try and do this at the moment. It's got to happen quite naturally with the correct exercises and the correct teaching. But when that does happen, you're contacting then, you're bringing together this female, creative, all-encompassing force from the Mother Earth and joining it with the spark of divinity, which ultimately links us to the sun. Because above the head, you could see the crown really as like a miniature sun above the head. So that there is this tremendous link, you could say, between the Mother Earth and the sun, which created her. And when we bring this within our being and within our consciousness, then we have mastered the experiences. I haven't done this, by the way, fully. I've done it partially. I haven't done it fully. I'm not advanced enough to do it fully. Dr. King did. He was a true master. And when you do that, you've learnt all the experiences you need on this earth, on this cycle of reincarnation, and you can then move on. Life goes on. Life goes on through the galaxy and beyond.
Interesting. So that, like, what you're speaking of is Dr. King, those states of, would that be enlightenment that you've kind of?
Yes, they're often called samadhi in the Eastern writings. The highest state that any of us can enter is called cosmic consciousness. And, I've had what I call entry level cosmic consciousness. I haven't experienced it in its entirety. And that's one thing you will know if you experience it. You're no longer guessing then. But it's taken me a long time. I mean, I've been doing this, as I mentioned, for decades. And I only had that experience 2 years ago. So it's when it happens, as I mentioned to you, I think perhaps before the interview, it's a tremendous relief in a way, because all the things that you believed, all the faith you had, all the many experiences you've had along the way, which have confirmed this to be true, are suddenly realized, because then you know it. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing indeed. And everybody will and can reach this stage, of course.
Are you able to put it into words, your experience? How it is experienced?
Not very well. Not very well, actually. It's very hard to put into words, because, in fact, somebody asked me. I mean, I had that experience, and I had some samadhi. I called it. I dipped my toe in the ocean of samadhi the previous year, and somebody said to me, what were you thinking when you're in this state? And I said to them, well, you can't think. You can't think, because you've moved beyond thought. You've moved into a state of knowing. So, for example, and you know what you're going to meditate on. So one thing that I meditate on, which was, don't ask me why, was a hedgehog. And I knew that hedgehog. I've never, ever felt the same way about hedgehogs since. I think they are marvelous. I think they're wonderful. In fact, I met someone, they came to fix my plumbing, and they belonged to the Save the Hedgehog Society. And I gave them a warm hug, this plumber, because I've never met any. I didn't know the society existed. But I digress. Whatever it is you focus your consciousness on at that point, and it might be something much more sublime. It might be something galactic. It could be certainly cosmic. If you're able to take the Kundalini even higher than the Christ center, then I think you do go into a cosmic state of consciousness. And some people have done that. And I've had, as I say, I've had an entry-level experience of it, but everything, you know it and you're one with it. It's then a state of being. It's not even a state of knowing then. You just are.
And I was
I'm sorry, I'm not explaining it very
no, this is
well.
beautiful. I love these conversations. I truly. And my question would be then for George King: was he in that just constant state of being of that state?
He was extraordinary. He was extraordinary. You know, one of the things that he always said, and that he pioneered, and he was actually a critic of some philosophies that, although he admired the philosophies, he could not understand why they missed this point, which is this: that you need to come down from a higher state and leave that higher state in order to serve. And it's pertinent to your question because, you know, if you want to really do something, and he was a very practical man, and in part of his service, he would be over water with over seawater, on a boat with engines, in a car. He even got into the nitty gritty of tape recorders way back, you know, before we had all the technology we have now. He was very functional, properties, you name it, writing, publishing, printing. He even operated a print machine. So while you're doing these functional things, and as I mentioned, while you're thinking and concentrating, you cannot be in that higher state. That you just can't be in it. And so you have to leave it. And he said this is one of the big secrets of creation, as a matter of fact. It's a secret of the Mother Earth. The Mother Earth herself could be in an extremely elevated state without even the physical structure that we live on. She doesn't need it. But she's come down. And I've got to compliment you because I do find it very easy to talk to you, Guy, about all this. It's very advanced material, really. And thank you for hearing me out. But she has come down in order to provide a refuge for humanity. So that's a very elevated example of it. The sun itself, we mentioned the sun, is constantly beaming energy. I mean, this sounds ridiculous, but it doesn't have a day off. It doesn't have a break. It doesn't say, okay, look, I'm going off for a couple of weeks. This is my vacation now. It is constantly and permanently beaming energy, life-giving energy throughout the solar system to everything, not just human beings, to intelligences on Mars, on Venus, on Jupiter. These are planets. Some people say, oh, you couldn't live on Mars. They can't sustain life. You know, I do a lot of, as I said, these mainstream interviews, and they're always looking for what they call the Goldilocks environment, you know, which is like us. And if they can't find a planet that has water and is close enough to the sun and so on, then there's no life there. Forget it, you know. Wrong. Wrong. There is multi-dimensional life. There is life on Saturn. It's the greatest life on any planet in this solar system. On Saturn, there's life throughout the solar system. And the sun is constantly beaming energy to all this life. And while it's doing that, it's not dwelling on itself. So it's, in a sense, and you have it with ordinary people too. You had it with Dr. King. Yes, he entered cosmic consciousness several times, but he would bring himself out of it because he didn't feel right dwelling in it for too long while the earth, the Mother Earth, was suffering and while humanity was suffering. And so this is the mark, actually, of a really evolved person. And, you know, some of these Zen Buddhists, for example, masters, you look at them in the 8th century and in China and so forth, were constantly, and I think it's likewise in Tibet and elsewhere too, were constantly trying to permanently inhabit this high meditative samadhic level all the time. They thought, you know, we must dwell in this. And they could have relieved themselves, as a matter of fact, of a lot of unnecessary stress in a strange way if they just thought, no, we're here to serve. I've experienced that. And the beauty of a spiritual experience, as I know you know this, is it doesn't go away. It's not like a physical experience. You have a great physical experience. It's very, very exciting. It's wonderful, but then it's over. It's finished. It's time limited, and it's over. Spiritual experience isn't time limited. It can be very, I mean, a blissful state can last for hours and hours and hours. But you need to bring yourself out of these states in order to serve. And that's one thing a lot of people said to me, don't you want to go back? You've had this experience, don't you want to get back into it? This is a very good question, I think. So it's an intelligent question, but I say, well, actually, what it makes you want to do is serve others. That's the main thing that I already wanted to before, but it's different afterwards. Because you know you're one with all life anyway. So why would you just want to go off and dwell in your own bliss? Yes, you'll return sometimes, but you really were here to serve. And that's what Dr. King epitomized in his own life.
There's a couple of directions we could go in here with everything you just shared. I think the first loop I want to close for everyone is that why do we need to descend to then reascend? What is that doing in the greater universal picture?
Well, there's more than one reason, but I'll give you one from our point of view. One very simple reason is in order to function. It's as simple as that. If you're in a really deep state of samadhic consciousness or high meditation or cosmic consciousness, you can't really physically move. It wouldn't really be safe to do so, even if you could. And you are highly sensitized, and you aren't, as I mentioned, really thinking. You've gone beyond thought. It's deeper than thought. It's greater than thought. It's a superconscious state. This is where psychologists really went wrong, I think, a lot of them, is they know about the subconscious or the unconscious, they might call it, and the conscious, but they don't know much about the superconscious. So you just, in order to function, in order to do things, in order to drive somewhere, in order to run a retreat, or in order to book a plane, or all the things that have to be done, you can't be in that state. So that's just a functional thing. The other thing is, there's another reason. You have to come down, and I'm not talking about myself now, but if we talk about the Mother Earth, or if we talk about a great master, you have to come down in order to help people, to be honest, who are at a lower level. So the Mother Earth, if she went to her true level now, which she could, and released her true flame, we would all be we couldn't inhabit the Earth. The vibration would be so high, we wouldn't be able to cope with this. So she has to bring her own vibrations down, and Dr. King did the same thing, actually, in his own way, in order to serve and be among people and be, as I say, functional, and also to be useful to other life. I'm trying to think of a good example, but if you had a really, well, this is a silly example, but if you had a really, really elevated, really refined piece of music, as one or two people have found, actually, you could find that your record label or your whatever, they wouldn't want to touch it. This is a basic example I'm giving here. So, but if you come down and you reach people at a level that they're at, they will listen to it. You can reach people, and hopefully they'll move up to that higher level later on. So forgive the example, but it's a question of a greater soul bringing their own vibrations down to reach a lower soul in order to raise that lower soul up.
For sure. And I guess with my question, though, I was looking at more from the soul's evolution. So the fact that we're actually descending into this physical mass to forget, to fully forget, to then crave that ascension, that from that separation to come back to the wholeness. And we tend to do that in our life cycles. And what is that contributing to the bigger viewpoint, if you like, that evolution of ourselves? Because it's hard when
Well,
we feel that craving. It's
it is
tough.
hard. I quite agree. It's very hard. It's very detuning, and it's regrettable. If you've got like people, I'm very, very lucky because I work with some wonderful people here who are very sensitive and very aware of these things. And they themselves are having wonderful spiritual experiences too. So if you have a community, if you have others you can share it with who understand or appreciate what you're saying, you're very fortunate indeed. I come across people who have nobody like that. And I reach out to them, as I'm sure you do, and they're welcome to contact me through my website, which is just richardlawrence.co.uk, purely to try and help them so that they don't feel isolated. It's a difficult thing, um, but by and large, though, to get to the nub, it's a deep question you ask. I feel, what are you doing? Well, there is a beauty. There's a good thing here that I haven't mentioned so much, which is you don't lose your evolution when you do this. If your motive is service, there is a law of karma. What goes around comes around. As you sow, so shall you reap. If you are giving up, genuinely giving up an elevated state of being to go into a lower state of being in order to serve others, you won't lose that higher state of being. It's still there. It hasn't gone. And as I say, that's the difference between a spiritual experience and a physical experience. And that's the difference between activating your chakras mentally and activating them, as can be certain ones anyway, physically. If it's a mental activation, the state is there and you'll find you can enter it again. And not only can you enter it again, when you do enter it again, it'll be even greater because of the service you've given. And that's the beauty of it. Service is the main and best way to evolve. Actually, service, if it's spiritual service, and such as through healing, such as through prayer, such as through studying great truth, and even by studying it, you're empowering higher thought on the mind belt, and therefore helping all humanity to some tiny degree, maybe, but to a degree. All these things will bring about a natural, unforced rise of your consciousness, and to some degree, a rise of Kundalini at the right time.
Imagine what the world would look like if we actually were taught this and it was spread out
Oh,
without an agenda or a kind of human framework, but this is how we are. This is our innate states that we can
absolutely.
contribute.
I mean, this is the whole. People. Let's say war. Let's come right down many levels. War. It is it's evil, of course. It's painful. It's disgraceful, and it's completely ridiculous. War, really. What's it about? Just killing a bunch of people on either side who aren't really engaged in the thing. So people think, okay, what's the answer? And they turn to two things. They turn to politics and finance. So they use finance and they use politics to try and bring a solution, to try and bring a peace, and it's going on. And some people are trying to do it, and I hope they succeed. And we pray that they succeed. But in the end, what has to happen is the people in those situations, or the people behind who are pushing those situations, which isn't most of the people involved, really, those people have to change. Their consciousness has to change. Now, when the good news again, when we do prayer, we do something called the 12
I saw
blessings.
that.
12 blessings was, yeah, now this is absolutely beautiful. This was delivered by the Master Jesus, who came from another planet. And you can imagine the trouble Dr. King got into when he said that in 1950s in London. But the Star of Bethlehem was no star. That's one of the great UFOs of history, Star of Bethlehem. And of course, Jesus is an interplanetary intelligence. He ascended into heaven, as we know, inverted commas, as did Elijah in a UFO or a fiery chariot, if you like. And you find the same thing exactly in the Vedas. One of the great, as they call Pandavas, ascended into heaven in a UFO. They've actually got a word in Sanskrit called Vimana, which means a flying celestial vehicle. But Jesus came again and spoke through Dr. George King and delivered this series of transmissions. And you can find this on the Aetherius Society website. In fact, we do 12 blessing services every day, more than once, actually, all over the world. And people could join in online every day. If you go to Aetherius, that's AETHERIUS.org, you'll see what we're doing online. You can join in if you wish. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to believe everything that I'm saying here today, but you can join in with this practice and energy will go out to the world. Coming back to our war situation, that must start to change consciousness. And that's what we need. Coming to your point, if everyone was educated properly and lived like this, and they will one day. That's the beautiful thing. There will come a day, and it's been prophesied in many, many sources, when we will have heaven on earth. But that will be when the great energy of the Mother Earth prevails, and we all live according to the spiritual laws. If you like, the laws of karma. We follow the laws of karma.
Do you believe that with Mother Earth that her vibration is changing, that it is stimulating a change on the planet as we speak, that more people
Absolutely.
are awakening?
Absolutely. Absolutely. She and one of the 12 blessings that I mentioned, in fact, the seventh one, talks about the fact that the sacrifice she's made, and she's held her flame back. And in fact, it's our fault. We've quenched her flame, is the words used by the Master Jesus, because she won't, as we were talking earlier, she has to bring herself down in order to allow us to exist at all, to gain experience at all. But very gradually, this energy is being more and more released. So I would agree with you 100%. And she's had a great initiation in 1964. And the energy hasn't been released fully at all, but it's starting to be released. And as it is, there will be a change, and there will be a change of consciousness. And we need to go out of our way to become one with this energy which comes from the Mother Earth. One way to do it is the raising of Kundalini. But you can do a very simple practice. May I give a simple
Please,
practice,
absolutely.
Guy? This is a beautiful practice, and you can make this request, and you can make it with as much love, thankfulness. The more thankfulness one has, and more appreciation one has when one does a spiritual practice, I believe, the more power that practice will have in your life. For example, if you chant mantra, as we do chant mantra, we use mantra, Sanskrit chants, which have a certain vibration. If you really respect those mantras and you revere those mantras, they will work much more powerfully for you. And with this practice I'm about to give with the Mother Earth, the more, in fact, if you go off, and Dr. King gave this press on time, if you just go off preferably into the countryside alone, or if you're with someone else, someone who understands and will leave you to be alone, and you just send out your love, your appreciation, your thanks to the Mother Earth, and then just stop and just pause and see what happens. You will, I believe, if you really leave yourself open, feel something coming back to you. I mean, I've done this myself. Actually, not only in the countryside, I've done it in an urban. I was actually shocked not too long ago by how quickly it will come back to you, and you'll feel it in one way or another. Absolutely, it is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, an actual practice that everyone can do, and it will protect you, it will purify you. We need purification because this is what stops the Kundalini flowing in its entirety. The impurities within us all, of varying kinds. If we visualize coming up from beneath our feet a violet flame, and as we do, we are thankful to the Mother Earth, And it comes up all the way through our body, and just as importantly, around our body, through the aura, the psychic body, the etheric body, if you like, as well, the mental body. And it just comes through just velvety. You can feel this. Some people have smelt this. You can definitely see this. I have seen this myself at times, and so have many others. It'll come up through you. The main thing is, though, just to feel cleansed and purified and uplifted, and allow it to go upwards and outwards and through you. And you'll start to make that connection then with the Mother Earth, who's the mother of us all. She is the mother force of all of us. And she's the power, as the ancient Greeks knew, actually. And you'll find it in Homer's 30th hymn, that she is the provider of all life, of all birth, and not just of human beings, of animals too, and plant life. She's the giver of life on earth.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And those practices really encourage you to get beyond yourself, don't they? Because we get so fixated on all our problems, of our stories, the traumas and everything that's there. And if we can just stop and pause and...
True. It's an interesting thing, I was thinking, Isaac Newton, he was a person who practiced a lot of alchemy. People don't realize that. He was an alchemist. He also was a Unitarian. I think that's the correct word for it. He didn't believe in the Trinity. Got into trouble. It was either at Cambridge or Oxford, I'm not sure which, but they didn't like this fact. But anyway, there he was. And he spent far more time doing alchemy, alchemical practice, which is a mystical, spiritual practice, transmuting practice using flame, which I believe, done properly, could connect to the flame I speak of, this transmuting flame. There he was doing this for hours and hours on end. And then he sits down one day, sees an apple fall to the ground, and suddenly goes, gravity. It's not quite like that. But, if you're in a certain state of consciousness, you can see something that's been there all the time, but suddenly you see it. And I actually believe the alchemy that he did and his mystical beliefs, they were semi-mystical, some of his beliefs, he had to keep them pretty quiet, was a bigger factor than all the scientific physics research, because others had done that before him. But it changes your consciousness. And to your point, you do these things, you do the violet flame practice that I just mentioned, and then you can look at things and suddenly they make sense. You can hear something, and I've mentioned discrimination. How do you tell whether, say, Dr. George King is a genuine UFO contactee or not? There are many ways you can tell. You can check it out. There is evidence. There is proof. There is authentication through things that he said that later were confirmed as accurate. You can do all of that. But in the end, you can apply it to your intuition. I wrote my best-selling book is called Unlock Your Psychic Powers. And everybody can do that. Everyone can unlock their psychic. Everyone's got them. And so many people, without realizing it, are psychically frustrated. They're there to be used as long as they're controlled and they're used in service. But the greatest of these powers, if you can call it a psychic power, is intuition. That's the greatest thing, because intuition is never, ever wrong. It's never wrong, Guy. It will never take you wrong. We can get it wrong. We can mix it up with our imagination, and you need training, and you can learn how to do that. But once you get the inner voice, the still small voice within you, it will steer you right, and you'll know. You'll see. You'll be able to recognize, say, the 12 blessings, or another great work, the 9 freedoms, which Spiritual Freedom Show focuses on quite a bit. You'll know it to be true. You'll recognize it to be true. And your intuition will steer you there. And likewise, somebody else who might be a very nice person, very well-intended person, thinks they're in touch with Orion or wherever it might be, the Pleiades or what have you, and they aren't. And you'll know that too. And you don't condemn them for it. And they might even be saying some good things in the mix. But you need this discrimination, and intuition is absolutely key in these days.
Absolutely. I love it. Richard, I feel like I could talk to you all day, mate, and I've chewed up the hour I have. It's unbelievable. Um,
Okay.
but I do. Is there anything with everything you've covered today you'd like the listeners to ponder on?
Well, I'll just end with this thought because I think this is the best news any of us has ever had. Within us all is this divine spark. So I mentioned knowing God. When I say knowing God, doesn't mean it's the God as described in the Bible or the God as described in some other religion or what have you. It is the God spark within us all, and it does exist and it is real. So as a very beautiful, I was very honored to co-author Dr. George King's last book called Realize Your Inner Potential. And in it, there's an affirmation, simple English phrase that people can use. And it's this: I am the divine presence which is creating perfection throughout my whole life. I am the divine presence which is creating perfection throughout my whole life. When you feel confused, when you're not sure, when you've perhaps got a lack of confidence, when you're searching, you can say those words. You might be sitting on an underground train or in a bus. Nobody needs to know. You can be thinking those words. You can be walking down the street, and you will start to feed the higher, the superconsciousness part of you. It's a conscious thought, but you'll start to connect with the higher part of you that knows I am the divine presence, which is creating perfection throughout my whole life.
I love it. I'm going to be using that as of this moment.
Good.
Absolutely. Where
Good. I'm so
where can
glad.
people? Where's the best place to send people? We'll make sure the links are in the show notes, Richard.
Well, I think probably to my website initially, which is richardlawrence.co.uk. Or, as I mentioned, the Aetherius Society's website, aetherius.org. And then I mentioned the podcast that we do, Darren Ball and myself, The Spiritual Freedom Show.
Fantastic, fantastic, Richard. So,
It's been a pleasure to talk to you, Guy,
likewise,
really,
yeah,
seriously.
likewise. I've really enjoyed our
Yeah.
conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. And it's
Because so many people, you start talking and you can't get past the first base because of this or that. I think you've got the right name there. Live in flow or live in the flow.
live and flow is the
Um,
the retreats.
Live in
Yeah,
flow. Yeah. Well, you're demonstrating it. So thank
I
you very
appreciate
much.
that. Thank you so much.